Welcome back to some amazing science projects as we learn all about weather in this 2-week weather unit. My name is Dr. Erica and I am so glad that you are joining us today. So far this week we learned how we could measure the sun, even though we couldn't quite do it because of the forest fires out here. And yesterday we made a weather vane, and I hope you guys made some really creative weather vanes. But those two things are really important for what we're doing today, because today we are going to discover what makes wind. And wind is really important in weather because wind creates hurricanes, or wind moves warm air through, or wind can move clouds around. So where does that wind come from? And interestingly enough, we're going to get to learn about it from some of the experiments we did. So the sun warms up our Earth, but it kind of warms certain parts of the Earth a little bit more than others. That's a little bit obvious because if I go down to Hawaii, I am like happy and in the sun all day long. If I go up to, I don't know, say Alaska, I'm going to be really cold for a lot of the year, especially if I go even more north. So the sun really heats the middle part of the Earth, and it has the poles of the Earth really cold, right? Interesting, because when we heat air, something really interesting happens. In fact, if you live in a really big house or with a really tall ceiling, it's really hard to heat your house in the winter. And that's because hot air rises. So as the hot air rises, it takes the heat with it, and that means it's less dense. So you might recall previously, we made a density column with liquids. And those liquids had honey, and then water, and then oil on top. And depending on how dense the liquid was, the most dense one was at the bottom and the least dense one was at the top. And the same thing happens with air. Air can change density, and that means that the hot air is at a very low density. It's moving around, like the little molecules are moving around, it's spread out, it doesn't weigh as much. Colder air is more dense, and that means it's sort of like hanging out more. It's like really thick and harder to get to. Well, those have names when we talk about weather. Those are high pressure zones and low pressure zones, which is really cool. Now, high pressure zones have more pressure. So if you imagined you were like under like a blanket of this, it would put more pressure on you. And if cold air weighs more, cold air is a high pressure zone. So it sort of like sits on me a little bit more, whereas warm air would be low pressure. And you might be wondering, well, Dr. Erica, how does high pressure and low pressure make wind move? And that is our experiment today. So for our experiment today, you need 2 ping pong balls and some string. You're going to need a little bit of tape and scissors just so we can get it all set up. And then you need a straw. That's all you need for us to see how high pressure and low pressure makes wind. And what we're going to do is I'm going to move these ping pong balls so that they touch each other without touching them, which is kind of cool. And you would imagine if I blowed sort of one direction or the other, they would all sort of move together, but I'm actually going to make them move opposite of each other so they're coming together in the middle. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to make a low pressure zone by moving the air. So by moving the air, I'm making it less dense. And so I'm going to make, sorry, did I say a low pressure? Yeah. And then I'll have more of the dense air over here, the high pressure, it's going to push it in together, which is cool. And this is actually the same way that planes fly, and we can talk about that after we check out our experiment. So what you're going to do is you're going to cut 2 sort of long pieces of string, and you're going to need like a doorway or a broomstick to run your experiment, because we need to hang these 2 ping pong balls sort of maybe like a hand width apart from each other. And to hang them, what I'm going to do first is I am going to put a piece of tape and just tape the string to my ping pong ball. So, oops, these guys are easy to get away from us. All right, so I'm just going to hang a piece of tape, or stick the string with a piece of tape to that ping pong ball. I'm going to do that with the other ping pong ball as well, which will be handy. They can't quite get away from me quite so easily then. So we're almost ready for our project. So I have these 2 ping pong balls on these nice long strings. And what you're going to do is you could either tape them up to a doorway, sort of a few inches apart, maybe around like here, or if you have like a broomstick or something like that, you could tape them on a broomstick and you could have yourself an assistant and they could hold the broomstick while you do the experiment. So I'm just gonna tie mine on just like that. I don't have to make a really big knot, which will be good because I want these guys to be level. So I don't want one really high or one really low. I want them to kind of be around the same height. And I'm just going to tie this little piece up here. There we go. And I'm gonna spread them out so they have a little bit of space. I'm gonna raise this one up just a little bit. All right, so I'm gonna have some space here. And what I'm gonna do with my straw is I'm gonna blow right between these, and that is gonna make a low pressure zone right there. So it's gonna make it so that there's not as many molecules in the high pressure area. The more dense air, which is out here, because this air is moving, is going to push the ping pong balls in. And this is how we create wind. When high pressure zones go into low pressure zones, because nature loves it when things are spread nice and evenly. So if it sees a high pressure and a low pressure, it wants to blend the two to make sort of a medium pressure. So we're gonna have these high pressure areas and a low pressure area, and the high pressure will push. And the wind from that push will actually make our balls touch, which is pretty cool. All right, so all you have to do is then blow right through the middle. You don't wanna blow too high up or too high down, straight through the middle and not in a different direction, all right? Ooh, maybe. You know, Evan mentioned that I might not be able to do this because of the straw today, because we have a really thick straw. We're gonna put ours a little closer together. And the reason why the straw is because it will shoot it out much faster. There we go. So before it got hooked into where the straw was going, you notice this ball moved in. Oh, I'm having trouble today. Oh, goodness. Woo! There we go. It's so tricky. I think maybe because my straw is a little bigger, so the air that's moving through that zone is not going as fast as what I would like it to go. There we go. So every now and then, oops, I get one that works. And if you have a skinnier straw, this experiment is gonna work better for you. You know, I was sort of secretly hoping that the straw size wouldn't matter, but I just learned today that it does. In fact, I'm guessing now a skinnier straw, like even like the coffee straws, would work even better than a normal straw. But that's okay. So when we move the air in here, these guys moved together. Every now and then we got it just right. They moved together a little bit. That's how a plane wing flies too. So if you look at a plane wing, you might notice something interesting. So one side is really curved and the other side is flat. So on one side of the wing, the air has to run really fast. And on the other side of the wing, the air can just walk because the air has to meet itself up. So this guy has to go really fast and the other one just sort of walks because this guy's got a much farther distance to go. And what happens is the air underneath the wing that doesn't have to move as much is more dense. And in fact, the plane just flies on an area that is more dense. And that's why you have to have a certain speed too, because you've got to get that air going fast enough to get that plane to lift up. So the same thing that creates winds or hurricanes is also what's keeping our planes up in the air, which I think is pretty cool. I think we are going to try in Zoom. I'll go around my house and I'll check out a few different things that we could do for supplies to use as a better straw than our awesome boba tube straws. But I was trying to be happy with the environment and not buy a package of plastic straws. That'll be the last time that happens. Next week, we have some really cool options too as we learn about weather. We're gonna make a cloud in a jar, which will be really fun. You guys will use a bike pump, or I'll show you also how to do it with just hot and cold water, which will be really fun. And then we're also gonna see another way where we talk about air pressure, where we create the low pressure and the high pressure, and it's actually gonna move something, which will be really amazing. So I want to say thank you so much for joining me today. I will see all of our friends in Zoom as we learn about things, and I hope I see you next week as we do a fun egg in a bottle and cloud in a jar trick, and of course take our field trip to the National Weather Center. I hope you guys have an awesome day. We'll see you tomorrow. Oh, not tomorrow. We'll see you next Monday. Have a good one.